Margaret Webb had been running Little Star's home for 37 years, and she'd seen every kind of heartbreak a child could carry through those doors. But on Tuesday morning, watching 8-year-old Tommy finally laugh at something silly during breakfast, she thought maybe the universe wasn't completely terrible after all. She was wrong. The first plasma bolt vaporized the playground where 6 kids had been playing hopscotch. Margaret had exactly 3 seconds to process the sight of children she'd raised from babies simply ceasing to exist before the second wave of fire turned the entire orphanage into a crater of molten glass. 214 children. Gone. Just like that. The attack lasted exactly 47 seconds. The Zephyrian Empire's third cleansing fleet, under the command of one Commander Vextar, had decided that Earth needed a demonstration of their power. And apparently nothing said fear us. Quite like murdering a bunch of orphans who were probably arguing over who got the last pancake when they died. The news reached Admiral Jack Morrison's desk at 0800 hours, along with his morning coffee and what used to be his faith in cosmic justice. Morrison was a career military man who'd seen his share of atrocities, but this one hit different. Maybe it was because he'd lost his own daughter in a transport accident 15 years ago. Maybe it was because he'd personally donated to Little Star's home every Christmas. Or maybe it was just because he was human, and humans have this funny quirk where we lose our collective minds when someone hurts our kids. Morrison set down his coffee cup with the kind of deliberate care that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Then he picked up his secure communicator and said 5 words that would echo through galactic history: "Get me the war cabinet. Now. Now." Within 6 hours, every major news network in human space was broadcasting the same footage. A peaceful orphanage. Happy children. Then nothing but smoke and ash and the kind of silence that screams louder than any explosion. The Zephyrian Empire had just made the worst tactical error in the history of interstellar warfare. They'd attacked the one thing humans will literally burn down galaxies to protect. Our children. The emergency session convened in the Pentagon's deepest bunker, because when humanity decides to commit genocide, we like to do it somewhere with really good soundproofing. Admiral Morrison stood at the head of a table surrounded by the kind of people you definitely don't want angry at you. General Patricia Rodriguez went by tank for 2 reasons. She could demolish a city block with her bare hands, and she had about as much patience as a caffeinated rhinoceros. Doctor. No. Felix Quantum looked like a mad scientist because, well, he basically was one, complete with wild hair and a tendency to giggle when describing weapons of mass destruction. Captain Luna Reeves had more confirmed kills than some small wars, and the kind of smile that made enemy pilots consider career changes. Morrison looked around the table and delivered what would become known as the Morrison Doctrine. Gentlemen, they just kicked the hornet's nest. Except the hornets have nuclear weapons and anger management issues. Tank cracked her knuckles, which sounded disturbingly like breaking bones. So we're talking about a proportional response, right, Admiral? They killed 200 kids, so we kill 200 of theirs and call it even? Morrison's smile could have frozen helium. General Rodriguez, I think you misunderstand the concept of proportional response. They attacked our children. The proportional response is extinction. Dr. Quantum practically bounced in his chair. Oh, this is perfect timing. I've been working on this theoretical weapon system, and I do mean theoretical, wink wink, that could theoretically destabilize a star's nuclear fusion process. Hypothetically speaking, of course. How theoretical are we talking, Doc? Captain Reeves asked, already knowing the answer from Quantum's manic grin. About as theoretical as gravity, Quantum replied. I call it the Stellar Collapse Accelerator. It's basically a really, really big physics homework assignment that ends with everyone getting an F for existence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. These weren't just military officers anymore. They were about to become the architects of the first human-engineered genocide in galactic history. Morrison stood up slowly, The man had lost his only daughter, Emily, in what everyone called an accident but he'd always suspected was sabotage by anti-human extremists. Now someone had killed 200 more children, and they'd done it on purpose. The universe had just taught Jack Morrison that sometimes the only appropriate response to absolute evil is absolute vengeance. Dr. Quantum, how long to make your theoretical weapon theoretically functional? 72 hours, assuming we skip all the boring safety protocols and ethical reviews. Tank, how long to assemble the largest battle fleet in human history? 60 hours if we pull everything, including the ships we're not supposed to have. Luna, how long to find volunteers for what amounts to a suicide mission? Captain Reeves laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Admiral, half the fleet volunteered before you finished the sentence. The other half are still filling out paperwork. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian monitoring station orbiting Neptune, Intelligence Officer Kike Snell was filing his daily report on human military activity. The primitives were certainly making a lot of noise about something, but honestly, what were they going to do? Throw rocks at starships? If Kike Snell had understood humans better, he might have realized that when we get really, truly angry, we don't throw rocks. We throw stars. Human industrial capacity, when properly motivated, is a beautiful and terrifying thing to behold. Within 48 hours of the attack, every shipyard from Luna to Titan was working around the clock, producing vessels that looked less like spaceships and more like flying middle fingers aimed at the cosmos. Dr. Quantum had set up shop in the Ares Weapons Research Facility, where he was putting the finishing touches on humanity's first star killer. The device itself was surprisingly small, about the size of a shipping container, which just goes to show that the most dangerous things often come in modest packages. The beauty of stellar engineering, Quantum explained to a group of engineers who were probably going to need therapy after this briefing, but is that stars are basically giant nuclear bombs that forgot to explode. We're just going to remind this one about its explosive potential. The stellar collapse accelerator worked by injecting exotic matter into a star's core, disrupting the delicate balance between nuclear fusion and gravitational collapse. It was elegant, efficient, and absolutely horrifying in its implications. Doc, one of the engineers asked, what's the blast radius on something like this? Quantum's grin could have powered a small city. The entire star system. We're not just killing a civilization here, people. We're erasing them from the cosmic census. Meanwhile, General Rodriguez was overseeing the assembly of what military historians would later call the Vengeance Fleet. 350 ships ranging from massive dreadnoughts to nimble fighters, all painted matte black because when you're going to commit genocide, you might as well look the part. Captain Reeves was busy training her pilots in something she called applied therapeutic violence. The mission parameters were simple: keep the enemy distracted while Dr. Quantum's science project did its thing. The survival parameters were considerably less optimistic. Listen up, people, Reeves addressed her squadron leaders. This isn't a military operation. This is an extermination. We're not trying to win a war. We're trying to delete an entire species from the universe's hard drive. Anyone having second thoughts can file a transfer request with their therapist. Nobody transferred. The Zephyrian Intelligence Network, meanwhile, was having something of a collective nervous breakdown. Their reports described human military buildup on a scale that defied logic. The primitive Earth species was apparently planning to attack the Zephyrian home system with a fleet that could probably conquer half the galaxy. High Command dismissed these reports as obvious disinformation. Humans were barely spacefaring. They couldn't possibly be planning something so audaciously suicidal as an assault on a system defended by the Empire's finest forces. Fleet Admiral Zahn Tech reviewed the intelligence reports with the kind of casual arrogance that comes from 1,000 years of unchallenged military supremacy. These humans are clearly bluffing. What are they going to do, declare war on our entire civilization over a few dead younglings? His aide, Sub-Commander Laxara, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, the psychological profile suggests that humans have an unusually strong protective instinct regarding their offspring. Perhaps we should consider opening diplomatic channels to diffuse. Nonsense, Zon Tech interrupted. They're primitives throwing a tantrum. When they see our home defense fleet, they'll run back to their little blue planet with their tails between their legs. 3 days later, Admiral Morrison stood before the assembled Vengeance fleet and delivered what would become known as the Orphanage speech. We're not going to war today, people. War implies the possibility of negotiation, of mercy, of surrender. What we're doing is pest control on a stellar scale. They killed our children. We're going to kill their star. Sweet dreams, everyone. The journey to the Zephyrian home system took 18 days of traveling through hyperspace, 18 days of absolute radio silence while 350 human warships ghosted through the galaxy like the universe's angriest funeral procession. Dr. Quantum spent the trip making final adjustments to his star killer, humming classical music while calibrating instruments of cosmic destruction. You know, Mew, he mentioned to Admiral Morrison during one of their planning sessions, there's something beautifully poetic about using a star as a weapon. It's like the universe itself is passing judgment. Morrison watched the hyperspace tunnel flowing past the observation deck and wondered if his daughter Emily would approve of what they were about to do. Then he remembered 214 children who would never get the chance to grow up and judge anyone, and decided he could live with being a monster. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system, and what they found was both beautiful and doomed. 3 inhabited planets orbited a magnificent yellow star, with orbital habitats and space stations creating a crown of civilization around each world. 12 billion Zephyrians called this system home. In approximately 6 hours, none of them would. Captain Reeves studied the tactical displays and whistled softly. That's a lot of innocent civilians down there, Admiral. Families, children, probably some of them who never even heard of Earth. Morrison nodded. I know, Luna, and if their government hadn't decided to murder our orphans, those civilians would live long, happy lives. But that's not the universe we're in anymore. The reconnaissance data painted a picture of a genuinely advanced civilization. The Zephyrians had art, music, literature, and philosophy. They had schools and hospitals and parks where their children played games probably not that different from hopscotch. They were, by all accounts, a people worth preserving, which made what Earth was about to do even more monstrous. Sir, reported Commander Hayes from the intelligence station, we're detecting approximately 40,000 Zephyrian defense vessels moving to intercept us. Well, sir, they're trying to arrange a traditional fleet engagement. Morrison almost laughed. They think this is a battle. Luna, deploy your squadrons and give them the fight they're expecting. Dr. Quantum, how long do you need to position your device? 30 minutes to reach optimal firing position, another 20 to complete the injection sequence. After that, it's just a matter of watching physics do what physics does best. The Zephyrian defense fleet approached with all the pomp and ceremony of a civilization that had never faced an existential threat. Their formations were textbook perfect, their communications formal and professional. They were preparing for a war. They had no idea they were about to become a cautionary tale. Commander Vextar, the officer who had ordered the Orphanage attack, was leading the primary battle group. His ship, the Eternal Glory, was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, bristling with weapons and shielded by technology that could withstand the heat of a solar flare. It wouldn't be enough. Unknown human vessels, Vextar transmitted. You have entered sovereign Zephyrian space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Morrison's response would become the most quoted declaration of war in galactic history. Commander Vextar, this is Admiral Jack Morrison of the Terran Navy. You killed our children. We're here to kill your star. You have 27 minutes to make peace with whatever gods you worship. The space battle that followed was magnificent, pointless, and utterly beside the point. Captain Reeves led her fighters in a dance of death against Zephyrian interceptors while massive dreadnoughts exchanged fire that lit up the void like deadly fireworks. It was the kind of fleet engagement that military historians would study for centuries if there had been anyone left to write the history. But while the galaxy's attention focused on the spectacular dogfights and capital ship duels, Dr. Quantum was calmly piloting a stealth vessel toward the system star, carrying his stellar collapse accelerator like the universe's most polite delivery service. Commander Vextar, meanwhile, was beginning to understand that something was very, very wrong with this battle. The humans were fighting hard, but not like they were trying to win. They were fighting like they were buying time. Sub-Commander Vextar called to his aide. "What are our intelligence reports on human tactical doctrine?" "Sir, humans prefer overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. This scattered assault pattern doesn't match their psychological profiles." That's when the proximity alarm started screaming. Dr. Quantum had reached the star. "Zephyrian vessels," Morrison transmitted on all frequencies. "You might want to start evacuation procedures. You have approximately 43 minutes before your star goes supernova." The response was immediate and predictable. Half the Zephyrian fleet assumed it was a bluff. The other half panicked and broke formation to race back toward their homeworlds. Vextar found himself caught between disbelief and the growing certainty that these insane humans had actually done what they'd threatened to do. "Admiral Morrison," Vextar transmitted, his voice tight with controlled desperation, "surely we can reach some accommodation. The attack on your planet was unauthorized, a rogue action by overzealous commanders. We can offer reparations, guarantees of non-aggression, anything you desire." Morrison's reply was delivered in the tone one might use to discuss the weather. "Commander, if you wanted to negotiate, you should have called before you murdered 214 children. Now you get to explain to them personally why their deaths were worth 12 billion of your people." Dr. Quantum's voice crackled over the comm system. "Stellar injection complete. Nuclear cascade initiated. I'd estimate about 37 minutes until the big fireworks show begins." What followed was chaos on a scale that defied description. 12 billion Zephyrians suddenly realized they had 37 minutes to evacuate 3 planets and dozens of space habitats. The mathematics were simple and horrible. There weren't enough ships, there wasn't enough time, and there was nowhere to run to anyway. Captain Reeves provided play-by-play commentary with the kind of dark humor that keeps soldiers sane in impossible situations, and there goes the first civilian transport, packed to the gills and flying like their stars about to explode. Which, coincidentally, it is. Oh, look at that. Some of their defense fleet is actually abandoning the battle to help with evacuations. That's either really noble or really pointless, depending on your perspective on stellar mechanics. The star began showing signs of instability. Solar flares erupted across its surface as exotic matter disrupted fusion processes that had been stable for billions of years. The Zephyrian system's orbital infrastructure, built to harness solar energy, suddenly found itself dealing with energy outputs that exceeded every safety protocol ever designed. Commander Vextar made one final transmission. "Admiral Morrison, I beg you. I personally ordered the attack on your orphanage. Execute me if you must, but spare my people. They had no part in this." Morrison's response was quiet, almost gentle. "Commander, your people elected the government that gave you the authority to murder children for political theater. They built the ships you used to do it. They celebrated your empire's expansion across the galaxy. Today they get to learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end of extinction." At exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds past the injection point, the Zephyrian star went supernova. The explosion was visible from 3 sectors away. 12 billion lives ended in a flash of light brighter than 1,000 suns. 3 planets, dozens of moons, hundreds of space stations, and an entire civilization simply ceased to exist. The human fleet watched from a safe distance as physics delivered its final verdict on the Zephyrian Empire. The journey home took 21 days of traveling through hyperspace while the galaxy tried to process what humanity had just done. When the Vengeance fleet arrived at Earth, they were greeted not as conquering heroes, but as something far more complex and infinitely more dangerous. They had become legends and monsters, sometimes both at the same time. The galactic community's reaction was swift and unanimous, absolute, pants-wetting terror. Within hours of the news breaking, every major civilization implemented what became known as Earth protection protocols. Human colonies, human ships, human tourists, and especially human children became the most protected entities in known space. Admiral Morrison addressed the galaxy from Earth's new orbital defense platform, speaking to an audience of trillions who were suddenly very interested in what humanity had to say to any civilization currently listening. We want to make something perfectly clear. Earth's children are off limits, not just discouraged, not just ill-advised, off limits. This is your only warning. The speech continued for another 10 minutes, but most aliens stopped listening after that first part. The message was clear enough: hurt human children, lose your star. It was simple mathematics, and even species that counted in base 12 could figure out that equation. What the galaxy didn't know, and what Morrison revealed in the final moments of his address, was that humanity had built 17 more stellar collapse accelerators and hidden them in strategic locations throughout inhabited space. We've done the math, Morrison explained with the casual tone of someone discussing lunch plans. We can sterilize approximately 43 star systems before anyone figures out how to stop us. We sincerely hope we never have to update that number. The Terran doctrine became galactic law within 6 months. Not because anyone voted on it, but because the alternative was having their sun turned into a weapon against them. Overnight, humanity went from a minor spacefaring species to the galaxy's most feared civilization. And they were perfectly fine with that reputation. The memorial service for the children of Little Star's home was held on a Tuesday, exactly 1 year after their murder. Admiral Morrison stood before 214 empty chairs arranged in the orphanage's rebuilt playground and delivered a eulogy that would be remembered long after the Zephyrian supernova faded from the night sky. "You were supposed to grow up," he said to the empty chairs. "You were supposed to have children of your own, to build lives and make mistakes and fall in love and change the universe in small, wonderful ways. Instead, you became the spark that lit a fire across the galaxy. I hope that wherever you are, you can forgive us for what we did in your names." The galaxy would never again be the same. Humanity had proven that sometimes the appropriate response to absolute evil is absolute vengeance, delivered with the precision of physics and the fury of a species that loves its children more than it fears being called monsters. Margaret Webb, who had somehow survived the orphanage attack by being in town that morning, stood at the back of the memorial service and watched Admiral Morrison promise 214 ghosts that their deaths had meaning. She wasn't sure if that made humanity heroes or villains, but she was absolutely certain it made them human. And in a galaxy suddenly very aware of what that meant, maybe that was enough.